is everybody doing today? Welcome back here to another episode of the Just Ballin podcast. Today we are continuing talk throughout the NBA offseason, and for today's episode, I wanted to kind of go through the most underrated or under the radar pickups this offseason. In my opinion, we're going to talk about a bunch today and just kind of either moves that I feel like aren't talked about enough. Maybe they went for like less than $4 or $5 million a year, or maybe we're just a throw in a trade as well. And I think could make maybe the most impact in the 2026 season. And the first move that I want to talk about was with the Atlanta Hawks. And we're not going to talk about Luke Kennard or Kristaps Porzingis or Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Asa Newell. I want to talk about Caleb Houstan, who still is not under the additions on the NBA website. I believe it's been officially announced. It's kind of odd. And even if you go to like Basketball Reference, he's somebody that still has his team under the Orlando Magic. But I thought for getting Caleb Houstan a minimum contract is well worth the flyer for the Atlanta Hawks, who are going into next year's season with a lot of big additions from the 2025 offseason, right? There's just a bunch of guys that I just mentioned that I think can be exciting next year for Atlanta. But I think when you look at like the end of this roster, I'm most intrigued about Caleb Houstan. Like even Spotrac doesn't have it, so maybe it's not been like officially announced by the team. I'm sure Hawks fans can let me know. But you look at like Vic Krejci, who I think is a super underrated young player in this league, potentially like the loss of Garrison Matthews in this role. Like Kobe Buffkin is still a super unknown player, especially with this three-point shot. It's not a guarantee that Dyson Daniels will be an elite shooter next year or Zachary Reese-Shea. These guys are going to still have ups and downs, ebbs and flows throughout the season. I think it's well worth the flyer for Caleb Houstan, who's got good size. I think he improved defensively last year. I think Orlando Magic fans can also let me know their opinion on that. But I thought there's a really good volume of him being just a flat-out solid three-point shooter now over the last two seasons. In the 2024 regular season, he took 193 three-point attempts, shot 37% on those threes. He took 160 three-point attempts last year, 40% on those threes. And if I go back to like what Caleb Houstan did at Michigan, he shot around 35%. He's always kind of struggled inside the rim, inside the three-point line at the rim. The decision-making within the three-point line gets a little wonky. I feel like he just doesn't know what to do sometimes, and it ends up forcing shots. But I like the idea of him playing off of Trey Young. I don't really know how many minutes Quinn Snyder will play him in the 2026 season, given how kind of deep this team is on paper, especially with the plethora of wings and Jalen Johnson being healthy again. You add Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I hope there's a path for Houstan to play. Atlanta's dealt with injuries over the last few years, so it's not a guarantee that all these guys are going to be healthy. But I believe Houstan playing off of Trey Young could be beneficial to his game as well. By far the best playmaker, passer, and point guard he's played with in his career, and that's no disrespect to like a Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, or even a point guard Jalen Suggs from the 2024 season. But Trey Young is in a completely different tier from those guys in terms of playmaking and initiating. So I'm really intrigued about Caleb Houstan, who it's been reported that he signed a minimum contract with the Atlanta Hawks, still 22 years old, and I'm surprised there wasn't a reunion in Orlando. I know that they are penny pinching at the moment with the Desmond Bane trade. And speaking of Trey Young, just kind of a quick side note, I saw on Twitter some debate. I mean, it's funny with the Trey Young, Derek White, who would you rather build a team around debate? And it's kind of funny. It's been going around too with Kyrie Irving and Chris Paul. We're in NBA offseason talk, right? So I guess the first thing I want to say, I probably should have did this at the opening of the pod and separated, but I mean, Trey Young may not be one of the 10, 15 best players that you want to build a team around, but you can at least have that conversation. There will be no team that is ever going to build around a player like Derek White. Is Derek White as good of a complementary piece and a supporting piece that you can get? Yes, 100% for the defense, for the off-ball movement, the offensive and defensive rebounding. There are so many things that Derek White does well that fits perfectly when you have a Jaylen Brown and a Jason Tatum. But if Derek White and Trey Young were like, you're trying to build a team around one specific player, you really can't build a team around Derek White. You're building Derek White around other players. So Trey Young is somebody you can at least have that conversation with that I don't think we can ever get there with Derek White. Would I take, 15 other guys that I would start a team with over Trey Young for sure, but I do think you can at least have Trey Young be your number one and your offensive engine, which you just can't with Derek White. And we even saw Atlanta go to the conference finals in 21 with Trey Young as the guy there. And then, the Kyrie Chris Paul debate has been funny this offseason as well. I'm always a Chris Paul guy, and I think Chris Paul is somebody that can elevate your floor. We've seen no matter where he goes, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Houston, Phoenix, he makes them not like marginally better, just in a completely different tier in terms of where they were before Chris Paul got there. Kyrie Irving is so good in that secondary scoring role that I think Chris Paul can be like the best player on your team. You're probably gonna have a limit on your ceiling. I don't like we saw Kyrie as the best player on his team in Brooklyn in 2020, in Boston in 2019, and he's just better suited in this role. We'll see how he's gonna be when he comes back this season with Anthony Davis there. Because I'm gonna kind of go through the NBA offseason deals here. I don't know if really Boston has like a deal that I love. I'm intrigued about Chris Boucher, who is 32 years old. He was the last remaining piece from the 2019 Raptors squad. I don't know. Boston, their main goal this offseason was to cut costs, and that's basically what they ended up doing. I don't think, like, not really, like, Charlotte's going to be a fascinating team next year with their lack of rim protection, defensive, like, on the defensive end. Like, Trey Jones, I think going back to Chicago is a good addition I would like to talk about. I don't think it's gotten any buzz just because Chicago's been Chicago for the last half decade, and they haven't really been a team to take serious. Now, Josh Giddey will inevitably be back in Chicago. I have no idea the dollar amount. I'm surprised that one hasn't been done yet. That one and the Quentin Grimes one, I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. Like, is Josh Giddey going to get 4 years, 3 years? Is the number going to be closer to 20 million, 25, 30 million? As like for Quentin Grimes, why hasn't he been signed yet? I mean, it's almost a guarantee that his numbers will go down next year in Philly, but I don't know. He was so good in the second half. He's played in big moments before with the Knicks, and he's exactly who you want around Paul George and Joel Embiid. It's just they have so many guards right now, and they're already paying 90% of their cap space to Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George in 2026. And how does like ownership feel about this team being so expensive, potentially going in the second apron and paying those repeater escalator taxes for this team if you give Quentin Grimes $20 million a year? And Daryl Morey does have the leverage too, because nobody can really give Quentin Grimes what he wants. Nobody has cap space right now. But I do like Trey Jones going back to the Chicago Bulls on a 3-year deal, I believe it was, right? So Trey Jones will be making $8 million for the next 2 years, and then it has a non-guarantee in the third year at around 4%, 4.4% of the team's total cap space. Trey Jones was a really solid player in the second half for the Bulls, where I don't know. I enjoyed watching the Bulls in the second half. Like Giddey, Buzelis, Trey Jones. I thought like in Kobe White, it was just like a run and gun style of offense. That's why I really thought they were going to draft like a Derek Queen who can replace Vucevic and just run up and down the floor. Not the quickest player in the world, but a solid athlete if he can get like more into shape and can kind of play a fast style play, like even like a 7 seconds because of the talented vision and hands that he has for a big. But Trey Jones averaged 11.5 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 57% from the field, 50% from 3 on low volume, solid free throw shooter. I thought had good court vision in the second half as well. And I think it's going to be a good backup point guard next year. We kind of know who the number one is going to be. It's going to be Josh Giddey. We know who the backup's going to be, and it's going to be Trey Jones. Lonzo Ball isn't in the picture anymore. Io has been kind of more in that off-ball role. You still have Kobe White, who's kind of replaced Zach LaVine as that main shot creator, that main isolation player, pick and roll ball handler when you're looking to as like a score first or you need a bucket, you go to Kobe White. You're not going to Josh Giddey. But I do think he can kind of maintain the offense. He plays like his brother, Trey. And I do wish they like were a little bit more aggressive. And Trey Jones is 25 years old now. I was going to look up how old is Tyus. Is he 30 yet? Tyus is 29. But I do think there's still room for growth in Trey Jones's game. And they brought back Billy Donovan, so they're going to continue to build that connection since they only spent 18 games together after he was included in that Zach LaVine trade going forward. Definitely one of my favorite moves this offseason when in terms of like a veteran minimum. Larry Nance Jr., who was a little bit older coming out of Wyoming, I thought has been kind of an underrated big man over the last few years. He's just not been on a lot of great teams. Like he spent time in the post-LeBron Cavs teams. He spent time in Portland, New Orleans, and last year with Atlanta, but he was banged up. And I just think Larry Nance is smart inside. He's a good lob threat. He could be a solid rim protector, and he can somewhat space the floor. He's not a great three-point shooter, but last year, I thought there was some intriguing kind of improvements in his game. He took 76 threes last year. He was on pace to shoot a career high in three-point attempts, and he shot 44% from three. Now, I'm sure if he ended up doubling those three-point attempts and he took around 150, he was not going to shoot 44% from three, but I do think we've seen a track record from him. We've seen a good shot selection. Now, I think a lot of that helps with what I was talking about earlier, being able to play with Trey Young. He's going to play with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, who are really good passers and playmakers and have good court vision and pick and roll, and they're pick and roll maestros themselves, where I think Larry Nance is going to be a massive upgrade in Cleveland, where that's a team that didn't have a lot of big man depth. I feel like I mention it all the time, but like Tristan Thompson was like one of their listed backup big men last year. Dean Wade sometimes had to be a small ball five. So you have Mobley, you have Allen, and I think you're getting a really rock solid piece at the center position. You just hope that Nance can stay healthy. He was relatively healthy, missed around 17 games in 2023. He missed 21 games in 2024. He was in that DeJounte Murray trade in the 2024 offseason. Yeah, I guess Nance has never played above 70 games in his career. Even at the end of the Cleveland days, he didn't play a lot. He played 36 games for the Pelicans and the Blazers in 2022. Was he included in the CJ McCollum trade? I believe he was. Yes, he was back in that 2022 deadline. So hopefully Nance can stay healthy. It's going to be a completely scaled back role. He's played around 20 minutes a night in the 2020s. So that may even be 15 minutes a night. And the Cavs definitely could use him to stay healthy going forward next season. I would say for the Denver Nuggets, I think it could be talked about more in Bruce Brown going back to Denver, because Bruce Brown is not going to be looked at as the player that got $20 million from the Indiana Pacers in that 2023 offseason. He came off a amazing finals run with the Denver Nuggets that season, was a big part of them winning a title. Now he signed, I think, roughly the veteran minimum with Denver next year. And it looks like he'll be fully healthy from training camp, preseason, start of the year. Yep, it's a veteran minimum at $2.2 million. Thank God for him that Toronto picked up that team option after the Siakam trade to have him as a trade asset. Because he played, 18 games yet in 2025. He ends up going to the Pelicans in the Brandon Ingram trade. He was a solid three-point shooter for the Pelicans, nothing special, not enough sample to really make anything of it. But we saw him have the best year of his career in 2023 with the Nuggets, where he averaged 11.5 points, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shot 35% from three, 48% from the field, and something that we know is true, that players that play with Nikola Jokic do get a bump. They're going to get better looks. They can get passes that normally other guys, if they're cutting or slashing, wouldn't find them whatsoever. And he was so good for Denver in that playoff run. He basically shot 50% plus from the field in round number one against the Suns, in round number one, against the Timberwolves, against the Suns in 2, Lakers in 3, and was still a very effective player against the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals, was a good defender, and is still just 28 years old. He'll be 29 by the time the season starts, but I do think this is one of the more, impactful veteran minimum free agency signings. I know everybody's talking about Denver, and Bruce Brown has definitely been talked about a little bit more than a Caleb Houstan or a Larry Nance Jr., but I do think this could be an extreme difference maker for somebody that, what is the veteran minimum next year? You're making 2%, 1.5% of the team's total cap space in 2026, which is kind of crazy. Now, I didn't love the Detroit Pistons offseason, but if you look deeper into the Duncan Robinson contract, it's really a 1-year deal, which is pretty fascinating. So Duncan Robinson ends up signing, it was a 3-year deal worth $47 million, and you're like, what? That's a pretty penny for somebody of Duncan Robinson, who's been all over the place. He had the best year of his career, I want to say in 2021. Was it 21 or 22? It was 2021, where he averages 13 points, shoots 40% from 3, 8.5 attempts a night, and then he gets rewarded with that big contract because he hit free agency as an unrestricted free agent earlier, given that he was undrafted coming out of Michigan. So he gets the bag and then basically turned into a negative contract over the next 2 years with the Miami Heat. Was a little bit better over the last 2 years. I think can have his moments defensively, not somebody you can rely on. Being your point of attack defender sometimes can get lost a little bit in help, but has extreme touch around the rim and can be an elite shooter. And if he's around somebody like what he was with Jimmy Butler, who's going to be Cade Cunningham, who's going to attract so much of the opposing team's defense, he's going to get great looks. So the Duncan Robinson contract is guaranteed $16 million next year, around 10.8% of the team's cap. And then you'll see it's 15.9 million reported for 2027, but only 2 million of that is guaranteed. So they can waive him, and they're paying less than the veteran minimum in dead cap. And then none of that is guaranteed for 2028. So they can guarantee it in 2027, $15.9 million. Not a bad tradable contract whatsoever either. You can use that as maybe salary filler in a different deal. Maybe it's at the 27 deadline or in the 26 offseason. And you can also or the team can waive it as well. I don't know the exact date. Okay, so it's guaranteed. The $2 million is guaranteed. It gets fully guaranteed on January 10th of 2027, which is crazy. So yeah, a team could acquire him next offseason and be out of that as well. So there could definitely be some type of agreement. Duncan Robinson could be $15 million to make a trade work in the offseason, but that team is not going to have to pay that full $15 million in the 2027 season either. So I do think this is going to become one of the more interesting tradable contracts. Like Duncan Robinson I don't think he'll be as good as Malik Beasley was in 2025 for the Pistons in 2026. I think you can get 70, 80% of Malik Beasley, though. And then, like I said, can become something more in the 2027 offseason, where now this can be, 2026 offseason, where this is a legit tradable contract that's appealing to get off of. $15 million can easily match that into a contract. But a team is like, okay, we don't want to take back, like, say it was like a Duncan or a Tobias Harris or something like that. Say he was actually under contract, but he's not. Like somebody like that. We'll take back Duncan Robinson, easily waive him. We only have to pay $2 million in bad money coming back. So I think that Duncan Robinson contract is a lot better when more of the details came out and there's not really much money guaranteed either. $18 million guaranteed of a $47 million $47 million contract. It's always funny going past the Warriors and what they've done this offseason, and it's NA for re-signing, NA for additions, and they lost Kevon Looney. The Houston Rockets were very active this offseason. I guess if we're talking about like extreme under the radar pickups, I'm intrigued about Josh Okogie in Houston. Now, you want as much depth as you can get just because injuries will happen in the NBA. And there's some older players, but also some younger players on Houston, and they like to play a gritty physical style of defense that can result in injuries. You pick up Dorian Finney-Smith this offseason, who was reported a 4-year deal, only $2 million guaranteed in that. I think plenty of people have been talking about that for the right reasons. Maybe Clint Capella for bad reasons. Did they really need him? But I like Josh Okogie's defense for 1.5% of your team's total cap, a veteran minimum, basically. And I thought this was a nice flyer for Houston. They're going to have to definitely get rid of somebody before the season starts. I believe they are out of roster spots. If I quickly count this, 6. No, they actually got 15 guaranteed contracts, bunch of two-ways right now. So they're able to pull that off. Which honestly gives them, I think, somebody with really good defensive upside. I mean, the offensive numbers aren't great. The guy has been in and out of good shooting years for sure after being a first-round pick out of G-Tech in the 2018 NBA draft. But I love what he's able to do as a point-of-attack defender. It's not like Houston needs this. Like, I thought the Lakers should have taken a flyer on Josh Okogie, who I thought would have been something they could use for sure. And I think even, like, Charlotte, like, they didn't really need him because they've added a lot this offseason to their bench. But I do think he's able to guard guys at half court, be a switchable defender, can hold his own in the post. Yeah, the three-point shot's going to be inconsistent, but hey, if you need somebody to get you a stop, having him in your at your disposal, especially in a playoff series where guys can get injured, who knows how the season can go for Houston, and he can step up. Maybe there's a couple games in the regular season where Jabari Smith maybe needs some time off, or Amen Thompson or Tari Eason. Okogie can kind of be a better defender than an Aaron Holiday, a Jeff Green, a Jayshawn Tate, some of the other veteran minimums you have on your contract. So obviously, like, you could talk about Kevin Durant, you could talk about the Jabari Smith extension or Van Vliet or Steven Adams, but I do think one of the more under the radar pickups definitely could be Josh Okogie. I'm intrigued about the Pacers center depth next year. Now, they gave Isaiah Jackson, I believe, a fully 3-year guaranteed contract going forward? I believe so. And then they bring back James Wiseman, who I'm intrigued coming off the major injury. But then Jay Huff as well got traded. He's got 2 years left on the deal. Basically, $379,000 of the 2027 portion of this contract is guaranteed. Now, I don't know if Jay Huff, I don't think he's becoming like overrated, but there's a lot of like highlight tapes of Jay Huff going on Twitter, and I know Pacers fans are very excited to watch him. I think there was a reason why. Like, he got off to a great start last year and truly broke out. Like, him and Scottie Pippen Jr. were really fun in the first couple months for Memphis. Now, you go over the course of the season, there was some maybe defensive issues. Can he really like anchor a team's defense, or is he much of a three-point shooter? And you look at maybe some of the All-Star break numbers, like post and pre. I remember that, like, yeah, he struggled kind of after the All-Star break. I think he may have had an injury. Grizzlies fans, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But he's just bounced around a ton, and there's a reason why. But I do think he proved that he could be at least backup center in the NBA last year for Memphis. He's not going to be your long-term starter in Indiana. I would be a little bit shocked if that ended up happening, but he could be a good rotational big that could space the floor. And I know Halliburton's out next year, and with Miles Turner in Milwaukee, I don't know how many games they're going to be super competitive in. Maybe they still end up winning 40 games, but the way Carlisle likes to play. I think Huff fits the system very well. He's somebody that hustles 110% of the time. He's going to get up and down the floor, and he can get some really good looks. I think he could have definitely gotten a major bump playing with Tyrese Halliburton, but the way that they're going to play, no matter if it's a make or miss on the defensive end, they're going to get off and running, and Huff can get to his spots to get some good open looks. So I'm a fan of that pickup for sure this offseason. I don't know if you can really consider any Lakers moves under the radar just because they are the Los Angeles Lakers, the most talked about team in the NBA. They just extended Luka Doncic. I like the Jake LaRavia pickup. I can't say that he's going to be better than Dorian Finney-Smith next year, but I'm more intrigued about LaRavia in 2027 than I am about Finney-Smith. He was inconsistent last year defensively. I don't know if he could be like your main stopper on that end of the floor. I can't confidently say that Marcus Smart will be as well, given how much he's been banged up over the last 2 years, and we're definitely seeing him regress. But I do like the upside in LaRavia, who's around like 6'6" or 6'6". I'm not going to say what's in between 6'6" and 6'8". And then he's able to shoot 38% from three last year in the second half with Sacramento, 44% in like not crazy volume with Memphis prior to the trade. But I thought looked more comfortable, more aggressive in the second half last year for Sacramento. And I do think there's a good player there. And honestly, like you kind of have to buy, like I just talked about Jay Huff. Well, he's not playing with Halliburton, but you're talking about like Caleb Houstan with Trey Young. You're talking about Larry Nance with Mitchell and Garland. And you're talking about Bruce Brown with Nikola Jokic. LaRavia's going to get some very good looks playing with Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, and LeBron James, which I think is going to exceed what he's getting paid next year for what he's actually going to be able to perform with. I think it'll be more impactful than Jared Vanderbilt, at least offensively, Vincent offensively, Kleba offensively, Smart offensively, Connect offensively. Like there's a chance he's the 5th most important offensive player, maybe 6th, if depending how high you are on DeAndre Ayton next season. I don't know. I don't think I have like anything here for the Grizzlies itself. I think Jock Landale's an interesting pickup, but maybe it's a slight upgrade defensively from Jay Huff, but probably more of a downgrade offensively. That's what I was trying to say. I'm also intrigued about Simone Fontecchio in Miami. So they basically got him in the sign and trade with Duncan Robinson. So Detroit got off some money there. Fontecchio has 1 year left on the deal. I believe it's around $8.3 million. He was really good for a horrible Pistons team in 2024. He gets traded to Detroit. A lot of games where they're just getting blown out. And he was really good offensively in a small sample size in 30 minutes a night. He averaged 15 points, 47 from the field, 42% from three. We also saw Malachi Flynn get a 50-point game in the 2024 second half with the Pistons. And last year, Pistons fans could probably attest, like, was not consistent on either end of the floor and had somewhat of a down year. Now, Fontecchio is going to be 30 years old, which is kind of crazy at the start of this year, but obviously came over very late. But if there's a team that could tap into the potential of Fontecchio, like they did with Davion Mitchell and like they've had with, like, Hayward Highsmith and Duncan Robinson over the years, it will be the Miami Heat. There's no Jimmy Butler there. There's no great facilitating point guard. I don't know if Davion Mitchell will take that step or Tower Hero can take that step as like a true floor general. But I do think Fontecchio is a slasher around Bam and Khalil Ware, somebody that can still be a solid three-point shooter, should still get open looks there. Wouldn't be surprised if he's playing a decent amount in Miami next year in the rotation. If you're going to say Rozier's not going to be in the rotation, he's a much more effective offensive player than Hayward Highsmith, I believe. And he could be better next year offensively than definitely than Jaime Jaquez, potentially more, and Pele Larson, and maybe even more than Nikola Jovic. Will probably be more polished offensively than Kasparis, just given like a 10-year age gap there. It could be a nice backup to Andrew Wiggins and Norman Powell coming off the bench. Milwaukee, I think Ryan Rollins coming back. Like Ryan Rollins was probably one of my favorite players last year under the radar. Just a dog defensively. Great point of attack defender. Great story as well. He's a second round pick in the 2022 draft. He was in the Chris Paul trade, Jordan Poole trade, and then had a nice kind of like stint with Milwaukee in the first half of the year. Played a little bit more in the second half as well. Good defender. Shot 40% from three. Very active on both ends of the floor. Will crash the offensive and defensive glass. We'll see if he's going to be like anything of a passer and as a playmaker, or is he going to be more of a spot-up three-point shooter, which is fine. They need 3-and-D pieces in Milwaukee. And Ryan Rollins came back on a very cheap deal. They have point guard depth. It's not like elite, right? It's Kevin Porter Jr., Cole Anthony, and Ryan Rollins. None of those guys are anywhere close to what Damian Lillard can be or was for Milwaukee. But Rollins is going to be making $4 million this year, $4 million next year, and as a $4 million player option in 2028. They did give some player options like to Bobby Portis this offseason, to Prince, to Harris, like to Sims. That's kind of how they operated this offseason, which I don't know if that's like how desperate teams operate, but they wanted to give their guys chances for opt-outs. But Ryan Rollins was somebody they were okay committing a guaranteed 2027 salary for, and he was probably, okay, you know what, I'm getting $8 million, I can get $12 million, but I think for less than 2.5% of the team's total cap in 27 and 28, Ryan Rollins, for someone that's 23, is probably the most intriguing young player on this Bucks team. They traded away AJ Johnson. As much as I want to believe in Tyler Smith still, he didn't play well in Summer League. Livingston played well in Summer League, so we'll see. But I think Rollins will be the only guy under the age of 24 or younger, including Andre Jackson, that'll play like in crunch time for them, because they just haven't really trusted Andre Jackson at times going forward. I think, like, for the Knicks, Gershon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson are probably two notable of signings for them this offseason. I think the Thunder re-signing AJ Mitchell on that 3-year deal is another player that's going to exceed his market value for sure. I think Trendon Watford was an interesting flyer for Philadelphia. I kind of liked what I saw in Brooklyn last year. Came over from Portland. He was somebody that was undrafted, I believe, in that 21 draft, which I think had Reeves as undrafted in that class too. Yep, Reeves. Was Naz Reid in that class, or was he a year later? No, yet Naz Reid was a little bit earlier, 2020. I'm reading a book called Hot Dog Money. Very interesting. I'm enjoying it a lot so far. It's about a lot of like college scandals in the 2000s, 2010s, and Reid's name came up, not in like a terrible way. But Watford was pretty competitive as a rotational big / wing for the Nets last year. He's shown that he can somewhat space the floor, and the 76ers have a glaring hole at kind of like that position in between Paul George and Embiid. I don't know if they're going to throw out Paul George as a 4 next year. Can they trust Justin Edwards to play up? Can they trust Kelly Oubre to play up as well? Something that could definitely be out of position for some of those guys. I think Watford could definitely take, I don't know about the starting power forward role, but somebody that is playing north of 20 minutes a night, because he can be somewhat of a good spot up 3-point shooter around Joel Embiid. He could put the ball on the ground. He could be active defensively, and he can finish around the rim and be a solid lob threat if he's running the pick and roll with Maxey, McCain, Grimes, Edgecombe going forward. He's never really been on a competitive team. I guess his best season was probably the 2022 Blazers. He won 27 games, because the 23 Blazers, okay, they won 33 games. And then he was part of the Nets the last 2 years, where the Nets in 2024 went 32-50. And we know the Nets last year were really bad. They go 26-56. So this will be by far the best team that Watford's been a part of. And I think he can end up being a solid 76er for his contract going forward, where for you YouTube folks, you'll see how bad the 76ers like cap sheet is, with 90% of the team's cap going to the top 3 of Embiid, George, and Maxey, and Watford is going to be making up 1.6. And then the club option in 2027, it's a really good contract, honestly, for the upside Watford can provide them. And they also picked up Jabari Walker on a 2-way as well. I think for the Suns will be interesting next year for sure. I think they have a couple guys that can maybe be intriguing as potential like under the radar pickups from this offseason. How is Nigel Hayes-Davis, shout out like the Wisconsin Badger, coming overseas? How is Colin Gillespie going to be in maybe a more involved role? They pick up Jordan Goodwin, who low-key for the last year, like better than Marcus Smart, and the Lakers let him walk for Smart. Obviously you trust Smart's defense and his veteran leadership as well. So I think there's a chance like some of those guards or Colin Gillespie and Goodwin can be worth more than the 1.5% of the team's cap they're making. And Goodwin's not even a fully guaranteed. And I think Nigel Hayes-Davis is an intriguing one after watching some of his overseas film this offseason. Still a really good player. It's going to be a different ball game coming back, but if he could be a solid enough 3-point shooter, he can have a spot for sure going forward in that Suns rotation. I would say anything else like this offseason super under the radar that I really liked. I mean, Windy Waters in San Antonio, just they need 3-point shooting, and they're like, I don't know. You can go through a bunch of guys on this team. Like Windy Waters has had moments in OKC, and even Golden State throughout stretches where he's a really good like spot up shooter, catch and shoot as well. And you're going through like, I don't think he's ever gonna he's not going to crack the rotation to start off the season, because I think they also have some intriguing guys with like David Jones-Garcia and Riley Minix, who got two ways as well. And I like Julian Champagne's shot, but I'm not surprised if Sohan, Carter Bryant, Stephon Castle, Cornette, Dylan Harper, or not Cornette, but Dylan Harper, Keldon Johnson. Those are 6 guys that have major variance in their 3-point shots. So keep an eye on Muddy Waters, but I'm not like super convinced he'll be a big rotational piece. I like Sajo Mamuuu leaving San Antonio for the Toronto Raptors, a team that also has like way too many guys over there, but they do lack a little bit of big man depth. They lose they lose Chris Boucher to the Boston Celtics, but are you going to feel comfortable with Mogbo at a 5 or Con Murray Boyles at a small ball 5 to start off their careers? Obviously Mogbo was sophomore, but Sandro basically a 7-foot big that could shoot pretty solid from 3. Just remember him torching my Knicks last year. I wonder, what was the final numbers? I think he was like almost perfect from the field. I guarantee you it was his highest score game. Okay, so yeah, it was March 19th. In 19 minutes, he scored 34 points. 9 rebounds. He went 6 of 7 from 2, 7 of 7 from 3, so 13 of 14 from the field, and knocked down a single free throw. Now I just want to pull up the box score of this game, because this was, I think, when Brunson was hurt with the ankle injury. Cat had 32 in this game. I remember this was like the sky was falling for a lot of Knicks fans, and you're like, okay, this team is maybe a first round exit going forward. Yeah, but I think Sandro is a very solid pickup for the Toronto Raptors. I mean, he's got $2.4 million guaranteed this year. He does have a player option next year. Sure, that could have been a little bit better of a contract if it was a club option. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in Toronto, so I'm not really sure if Sandro's numbers will look a little bit better, or is he going to do some of the more non-box score popping numbers going forward. I mean, the Jazz, I don't know why they traded for George Niang. I guess they got 2 seconds for Niang, and they traded some seconds this offseason, or the one in the Sexton deal, so they recouped some there. I think for them, it's just I'm excited to watch the young guys play next year. For Washington, too, just a lot of guards, a lot of wings. We'll see if McCollum and Middleton are on this team past the deadline. Maybe Malachi Branham something, but there's like 6 other guys I'm more intrigued about in Washington next year over Malachi Branham. In like the backcourt / wings. Like I'm more intrigued about Trey Johnson, Will Riley, Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Cam Whitmore, AJ Johnson, Keyshawn George. That's 7 guys. And maybe even Justin Champagnie, that's 8. And then you still have Corey Kispert in there and Jameer Watkins on a 2-way. So yeah, I would say those are some of my more of the under the radar pickups that I like this offseason. To recap, Sancho Mamuuu on like a 1+1 with the Toronto Raptors. I'm intrigued about Lindy Waters in San Antonio, but I also want to give some love I should have mentioned before. Kelly Olynyk as well. I think just another good big man that could space the floor a little bit. If he could stay healthy, we'll see behind Luke Cornett and obviously Wemby. Anything else? Or I'm just recapping. Yeah, I like Jordan Goodwin in Phoenix and Colin Gillespie back there as well. I like Trendon Watford in Philadelphia. I like the AJ Mitchell extension with the Thunder. I liked the Bucks bringing back Ryan Rollins on a 2+1. The Miami Heat getting Simone Fontecchio in the Duncan Robinson sign and trade going forward. I like the Lakers getting Jake LaRavia this offseason for sure. Jay Huff in Indiana. Josh Okogie in Houston. Just scroll past the Warriors page. I didn't mind the Duncan Robinson contract. I think it's now an underrated contract with that partial guarantee in 27. Bruce Brown in Denver. Larry Nance Jr. in Cleveland. Trey Jones in Chicago. And then the last one, I believe, was Caleb Houstan in Atlanta. So that is going to be for me. Hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the Just Ballin podcast. If you did, I'd appreciate you leaving a thumbs up on YouTube. Hit that follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're not. Could really appreciate you also leaving a rating and review over there as well. No audio pod on Friday. It's just kind of the off-season schedule. There will be a YouTube video though. Probably another Sporkle quiz. I think that it's a fun off-season, just random video to do. And then when we get closer to the NBA season, probably beginning of October, end of September, we will go back to maybe 3 to 4, maybe even 5 audio pods a week, depending on if there's a lot to talk about. I'm excited for the Eurobasket this year as well. That starts like mid to the end of August. So we're coming up on that. We're going to be able to watch like Luka and Jokic and some of those guys play in the Eurobasket. A lot of good talent over there as well. So be on the lookout for that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.